Greetings and welcome to the channel. Today we're at the Church of St Michael and All Angels in the village of Princetown in Devon. What's interesting about this church is it holds the dubious distinction of being the only church in England to be built by prisoners of war. Now, before someone mentions it, there is an Italian chapel in Orkney which was built by Italian POWs during World War II. Returning to this church, the prisoners who built it were actually captured during the Napoleonic War and were initially held in 6 prison hulks in Plymouth Harbour. The idea of a prison on Dartmoor was first mooted by Sir Thomas Tyrwhitt in 1805. He'd actually leased a large parcel of moorland from the Prince in 1785. The Prince in question later became George IV. Tyrwhitt then built an estate at Tor Royal and set about improving the local economy and of course his own prosperity. His idea was to build a prison to house Napoleonic War prisoners in a location so desolate that it would be absurd to even contemplate escape, yet close enough to Plymouth that troops could quickly march in if there was trouble. The prison was begun in 1806 and by 1812 held 8,000 French prisoners of war. Work actually started here on the 19th of March, 1812. The first American prisoners arrived in the following year and were held aboard prison ships moored in Plymouth, like their French predecessors. When the prisoners rioted, the British government decided to move them to Dartmoor, 17 miles inland. The prisoners were marched to windswept Dartmoor in groups of 250 men, but they were not simply brought to Princetown to rot in a jail, they were also brought here to work, and work they did. St Michael's was built between 1812 and 1815 using these prisoners from the American and French campaigns. The French left in May 1814, so the building was finished by American POWs. The prisoners were actually paid 6d or 6 pence per day for their labour, but the money was forfeited if they tried to escape. Now, whilst I was here, I'm sure I read some details about a prisoner that attempted to escape when they were building the curtain wall around the church grounds, but I can't find anything in my information nor on Google to confirm it. However, I'll warrant I'm slightly more reliable than Google AI at present, given it was about 300 years incorrect about the age of the church tower in my previous video. The bit I'm looking at the moment is the access to the tower, which was closed off. The last POW left Dartmoor prison in 1816 and the church was closed. It was actually reopened and reconsecrated in 1831 and remained in service until 1992. It is now in the care of the church's Conservation Trust and is no longer used for regular worship. As you may observe, there's a feeling of starkness about this place, the sort of starkness that you would expect by being imprisoned, I suppose. The stained glass window in the east wall of the chancel was installed in 1910. It was a gift from the National Society of United States Daughters of 1812 to commemorate the American prisoners of war held at Princetown. The pulpit's believed to be either late 17th century or early 18th century. As usual, I'll go into the pulpit and have a look at the parishioners. I've resisted the urge to say a captive audience. They all seem to have escaped. That's a lot of 6 pences I'll have to withhold paying. Looking at the bits that have fallen off the pulpit, I wonder if I'm imperilled by standing there. Looking at the church's Conservation Trust leaflets, it seems as there's been a lot of vicars here. I guess looking at this bleak outlook has made them want to escape too. The French, American and British flags seem to indicate some sort of reconciliation. Those who were foes became friends and may return to being foes again. The chancel apparently still retains furnishings designed by R.M. Fulford in the 1870s, including the frontings to the choir stalls and the vicar's stall. The 19th century Gothic altar table was supplanted by the present altar in the 20th century. The window was made by Mayer of Munich and depicts scenes from the life of Christ. culminating in his passion, resurrection, and his ascension in the centre light of the window. Plenty of windows here to allow the light in, but I cannot help feeling a sense of gloom within this space, perhaps only because it's a cold November day and I'm in need of some warmth. Why not leave a comment below to cheer me up? Were you imprisoned by the YouTube algorithm and forced to serve a sentence of 10 minutes to watch this? Have you subscribed to YouTube Premium so you can shorten your sentence by not watching adverts? Let me know. The pews or open benches are of an unusual type for Devon. They are typical of the Victorian fashion for honest construction. I can't help wondering whether their guards were better able to keep an eye on the prisoners this way. Of course, in saying this, it's rather misleading because it gives the impression that this church was built for prisoners rather than the prisoners built it for the parishioners of Princetown. These here are described as biblical herbs. I've not heard of that before. Have you? On the 4th of April 1912 was the unveiling of the granite cross, a 15 feet high monolith with 3 steps being of octagonal form, dedicated to all the convicts buried in the churchyard at Princetown Church. Convicts were buried in unmarked graves, and this cross with its sheltering arms extending over their graves is in memory of them. Now as I wander this way, you'll see what appears to be teeth sticking out of a grassy jaw, or possibly even pet-sized graves. I don't think they actually relate to the prisoners here who were buried, but maybe they are here at a respectful distance from the graves so that they don't interfere with them. There are, I understand, approximately 271 American prisoners buried here. There's a link to an interesting webpage relating to Dartmoor prison, as usual, in the description below. I just thought I'd mention that the church's conservation trust is reliant on donations to keep these places going. The costs are enormous, and they say inside that they need to raise an additional £1.5 million every year for essential repairs. I'll put some links in the description below for anyone who might be able to help them in some way. All that remains is for me to say thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.